Chapter 26. Late at night, with his bedroom door locked, Theo opened his laptop and began typing the letter. It was a letter he had been thinking about for days, and though he seriously doubted he would ever mail it, he wanted to write it anyway. Dear Mitchell Stack, I have in my possession some papers that clearly show your son-in-law, Stu Malzone, owns 20% of a company called Park and Land Trust. Joe Ford and two other men owned a right of the company. I also have a copy of a legal document called an option, which gives PLT the right to buy 200 acres from Mr. Walt Beeson near Sweeney Road if the bypass is approved by commissioners of Stratton County. Looking at these papers, it is very clear that your son in law stands to make a lot of money from the bypass. This is a gross conflict of interest on your part. I have no way of knowing what Joe Ford has promised you, if anything, but I'm sure the newspaper reporters will have a lot of fun digging through your trash. Here's the deal. If you vote to approve the bypass next Tuesday night, then I will hand over these papers to Mr. Norris Flay with the Strattenburg Gazette. If you vote against the bypass, then the slimy deal between Joe Ford and your son in law will never be mentioned, at least not by me. Sincerely, a concerned voter. After a lot of research, Theo had learned that it was not against the law to send an anonymous letter. Anyone can use the US mail to send a letter or package to anyone else without identifying themselves. And as long as the anonymous letter is not threatening, then the person who sends it cannot be charged with a crime. Assuming, of course, that person is ever discovered. Was it against the law to threaten someone? Theo had struggled with this issue for hours. To commit a crime, a person making a threat must have a clear intention and the ability to carry it out. For example, if A threatens to kill B, but says so in a way that's harmless, then there is no criminal act. Likewise, if A threatens to kill B and really means it, but is a quadriplegic stuck in a wheelchair, then he lacks the ability to carry out his threat. However, if A is dead serious and has the ability to make good on his threat, then the threat becomes a criminal act. Such arguments were why Theo loved the law. In the case of Mitchell Stack, though, Theo's threat of public exposure could not be considered a criminal act, even if he were serious and could follow through. Why? Because exposing corruption is far different from killing someone. Exposing corruption is not illegal. Murder, of course, still is. Theo read the letter again and made him even more nervous. He felt like David staring up at Goliath. Mr. Stack was a powerful politician who served on the county commission for 15 years, since before Theo was born. Who did Theo think he was, trying to intimidate such a man? On the other hand, would not get caught, at least not in theory. If he in fact mailed a letter, he would do so in such a way that no one would ever know where it came from. That's the purpose of anonymous mail, right? The sender gets to hide behind a wall of secrecy. He would use rubber gloves and not lick the stamp. Everything would be typed, nothing handwritten, and he would print the letter at school where it couldn't be traced. He would deposit it in a remote postal box far from the security cameras. He was certain he could pull this off. Still, it did not feel right. It seemed kind of cowardly. There should be a better way to confront a crooked politician than by sneaking around firing off unsigned letters. But after 3 days of nonstop hyperactive thinking and scheming, Theo had no other plan. He turned off his computer, turned off the light, situated Judge at the foot of his bed, and tried to go to sleep. His eyes would not close. The letter was a bluff and nothing more. It wasn't a real threat because Theo could never reveal what he knew. He could never show Norris Flay or anyone else the papers, now stuck away in a batch of retired files deep in the storage boxes at Boone and Boone. Theo knew the rules. The Ike had made them very even clearer. When it came to a client's secret, nothing left the law office. So why not send a letter? What was the harm? It wasn't a crime. The Joe Ford files would be protected. Mr. Stack would read the letter, know immediately what whoever wrote it knew the truth. And at that point, he might be terrified of being exposed. The anonymous letter stood a good chance of bullying Mr. Stack into voting against the bypass. Was this right or wrong? Theo flipped and flopped for an hour as Judge glared at him in the darkness. Then he thought of something else. Wouldn't the letter reveal Joe Ford's business to Mr. Stack? Yes, certainly it would. But then Mr. Stack already knew about the shady land deal, right? So the letter wouldn't reveal anything that Mr. Stack didn't already know. Would this be a violation of a client's secrets? Maybe, Theo said out loud, and maybe not. The knot in his stomach was back, and he needed to use the bathroom. At midnight, he was sitting on his bed in the darkness, hunched over his laptop, pecking away with some new ideas for a public hearing next Tuesday night. For the moment, the letter was forgotten. He slept little, and at 6:30 he got up and splashed water in his face. He turned on his laptop and, as it was his habit these days, went straight to YouTube. The bypass video had over 31,000 hits. Theo watched it again, a wide grin on his face. He then went to the Gazette and found another front page story by Norris Flay. Evidently, Mr. Flay had ventured over to Jackson Elementary again and found a story about a teacher with a lot to say. Her name was Miss Rooney, and she and her third grade class had begun wearing yellow surgical masks as a sign of protest. This had quickly spread throughout the third grade and the fourth, and there was a beautiful color photo of about 50 kids posing on the playground, all with the masks. The yellow mask, a brilliant idea. Below the photo, there was another story about the bypass. The governor had passed through Strattonburg the day before to rally the troops and push for the project. He had spoken at the business forum luncheon and given his usual spiel about how much the area needed a bypass. There was a photo of him mugging for the camera with two of the county commissioners, Mitchell Stack and Lucas Grimes. He called both men bold leaders, unafraid to make tough decisions. Staring into the eyes of Mitchell Stack, Theo decided to mail his letter. He waited until Friday afternoon. He had scoped out a mail drop box on a street corner near Gill's bike shop, a place he knew well. It was a typical large blue metal U.S. Postal Service box with a heavy pull down slot at the top. As far as Theo could tell, there were no nosy video cameras on any of the nearby buildings. He had 3 letters, all identical. The letters themselves were on plain white sheets of copy paper, like a million found in every law office. The language had changed little since the original draft. The envelopes were plain white, too, but the wording was different. The return address was from a person who did not exist, a Mr. Toby Clemens, 667 Garwood Street, Strattonburg. There was no such name in the phone book and no such street in town. Theo decided to use the return address to make the mailing look more authentic. One envelope was addressed to Mr. Stack at his home, another to his hardware store, and the third to the office of the county commissioners. The mail was picked up at 6 p.m. each afternoon. At 4:10 Friday, Theo approached the drop box with the 3 letters in his backpack. He was a nervous wreck, though he could not pinpoint exactly why. He felt as though he was in the middle of a serious criminal act. For almost a week, he had debated this back and forth, up and down, pros and cons, inside and out, and he made his decision. What he was doing wasn't wrong. Maybe it didn't feel completely right, but it could not get him into trouble. And most importantly, it might just kill the bypass and save the Quinn family farm and keep polluted air away from kids and so on. Theo was convinced he was right. Well, he'd been convinced at school and at the office, and as he rode his bike over the mailbox, but when he stopped and pulled the letters from his backpack, a voice told him not to do it. Don't mail the letters. It's wrong and you know it. You're using secret information that you have no right to use. If you were a real lawyer as opposed to a kid lawyer, you would be violating rules of ethics and could get you into serious trouble. Don't do it, Theo. His heart was pounding and his feet were heavy, and Theo knew he should listen to his conscience. The fact that something is not clearly wrong doesn't mean it's right. Ike had once told him that in the court, great lawyers always trust their gut. Right now, Theo's gut was turning flips. He shoved the letters into his backpack and hurried away. After half a block, he felt much better. He was breathing, smiling, pedaling furiously, and his backpack weighed far less with the letters still buried inside. I said chapter 26.